There we go.
Same.
Same. Nice.
Yep. I'll just record when he is.
Alrighty. So, let's talk about Ratchet and Clank 3 Up Your Arsenal.
Let's do it.
It's the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think the first one was also the big one.
Oh, yeah, but I do think this one's quite big too, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, talk to me. What's your time with Ouya? Because I think you ended up spending more time on the first game, a little bit more on the second game, but...
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and spend a minute here to pull up like my speedrun.com history with Ouya.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see what kind of runs I got when I played. All that stuff makes it a little bit easier to remember the timeline because I don't quite recall the first month I played in, stuff like that.
Yeah, roughly just want to get a good read on like when you're involved and when you show up and when you move on, more or less.
Yep. So I started out playing Ratchet 3 in the start of 2015. There weren't all that many runners back then. They're pretty much just IN and Zem were like, kind of the only two, and Toto Zigum as well. But I started out with Any%, and Any% was actually kind of like seeing a bit of a... Like, Any% was kind of the focus when I started like joining in, especially because IN was incorporating a lot of the techniques that were... Well, IN at the time was slowly turning Any% into NG+. Basically just finding earlier and earlier ways of skipping into VR training. So for a little while, actually, around the like 1 hour mark, there was a 4-way battle between me, Toto, IN, and Zem in Any%. And I ended up getting a single record in my whole lifespan. I beat IN, I remember, and I used a pretty crazy skip at the end to secure it that no one does today. So that's my time starting out, but eventually New Game Plus started kind of just taking over, and I remember everybody recommending me New Game Plus. Ricky, you got to play New Game Plus. It's so sick. It's so fast. And at the time, I was a little bit like purist with it. I'm like, do I really want to try New Game Plus? Because it's like it seemed like, I don't know, something about it at the time. And it's funny because I get people coming in now asking the same thing. It seems like starting with all the things from the beginning is a little cheap. You don't really have to like buy anything, but the difficulty lies within the movement. The movement is the difficulty. And I didn't really realize that the moment you start playing New Game Plus, you realize, holy shit, this is actually what it's all about. Like, this is like this kind of difficulty is way better than the kind of Any% difficulty that's just dying in 2 hits. Like, it relies on your execution, on the difficult inputs, on chaining the movement like fluently together, and that's why New Game Plus is so sick. So I don't think I ever reached further than top 3. I think I was behind Zem and IN, but I do think I was 3rd, which was like pretty decent, all things considered. Certainly good enough to like make the guide and all that sort of stuff. But I was never a record contender of any kind. I never really gave it a hard push. Zem and IN were just super, super good for their time. I had no chance, for sure. The closest I got was probably within 2 minutes of Zem.
Man. Talk to me a bit about IN, because I've heard him described as being one of the best to ever do it. Like he's regarded as one of like the big names and the giants, like from back then. And clearly, I mean, you talk about him a lot, and tell me about him because he's one of the characters that I don't know too much about.
So IN, man, it's hard to talk about IN without talking about how like he came into the scene, because I'm pretty sure IN kind of like looked at Zem's old runs and just kind of went like, hey, can you teach me how to do this run? And then Zem's like, this guy wants to learn the run. Well, I guess sure, I'll teach you how to do it. And then IN just shows up. He's like 14 at the time, 14 years old, shows up with like a new record in Ratchet 3 and completely destroys Zem. And yeah, so when IN started, he was really, really young, and he was really good from an early age. And he spent a ton of time on all sorts of various categories. This was kind of before PS3 was like optimal for Ratchet 3. This was before PS3 was optimal for Ratchet 1. So
Mhm.
IN was doing all these crazy good things on PS2 back then, and his times for the time were just super ahead of its time. Like, he was the first person to essentially, like, IN was basically he set really, really good times in so many different eras. So, like, he was pretty much the first guy to, like, do a lot of categories to begin with. And then when Silence came around and, like, we got enlightened by his movement, IN was sort of the first person to translate that movement. He looked at what Silence was doing and he learned what Silence had discovered, and he just, he was able to copy it,
Mhm.
which was very impressive. And even years later, IN has just continuously been able to, remain a top threat. I feel like he has to muster up a lot of courage in order to, like, Ian has to muster up a ton of courage these days to be able to get back to the game and compete, because he doesn't settle for anything but, like, at least top 3. Um, which is, just remarkable considering he started in, like, 2013, 2014. So even in 2021, when he was competing a bit with Fear and Ratchet 2, I mean,
Mhm.
he still got it. And that's why that's what makes it so impressive. There's a lot of people that play now that probably don't realize how hard it can actually be to be around in, like, 2013, 2014, and then still be good in 2021. That's ridiculously hard, especially because games don't change as rapidly these days. They change a lot back in the day. So the amount of adaptations you have to get used to over time is a lot more frequent. Like, I guess one comparison is, like, you'll see a lot of League of Legends players retire by, like, 24 or 25, because the game is just so stressful on people's mental, because you have to stay up to date with the game's current meta in that way. And it's sort of the same thing with early speedrunning. The routes change so frequently that for someone like IN to be able to keep up is very, very impressive for sure. Um, and yeah, his times just throughout all the games were just really, really good. And he just kind of comes out of nowhere with a bunch of really good ideas. He has a great way of thinking about the games. And he's a good friend as well. Bit of a mysterious guy though. He doesn't really mic a lot. I've spoken to him a handful of times, but even to his closest friends, the mic rarely comes out, and that's something to take note of, I guess. IN is he's a bit to himself for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
but he does value his friends, and he tells us that for sure.
That's good. Ian strikes me as a guy who kind of, like, goes into the lab and is like, "How do we, like, save more time?" Or, like, "How do we, like, get this skip?" Is he much of, like, a glitch hunter or a strat finder kind of guy?
I can yeah, he's definitely okay. I can say two things. So Ian's got a very, very good eye for finding new strats, both minor optimizations or major strats. And he's also a great runner. I wouldn't really, like, wage him one side or the other,
Mhm.
but I personally think his running achievements are probably some of the best things he's done. Back in the early days, Ian was, like, balls out, just speed. Like, consistency was at the lowest priority for Ian. He went for everything. He focused on speed at whatever cost. I've never seen anything as crazy, which can, like, it impressed a lot of people back in the day. It impressed a lot of people, like, how he just went for everything. But you can see you can see how Zem, like, slowly but surely, like, catches up to him and overtakes him and manages to keep the lead, because Zem went for more consistent strats. And this isn't to say Zem wasn't fast either, but, like, Ian would just had no, like, scale of, he didn't like settle for anything that wasn't the fastest. And it was kind of ridiculous to watch sometimes. You're like, man, that is, God, like, you're watching and you're like, man, that's so stupid, but I respect that so much. Like, something about it, you're just like, man, that is so not worth it. Why are you going for this? But at the end of the day, you feel jealous because he has the balls to go for that. There's so many strats that's like that, where you're like you're wondering, you're sitting there watching and you think about it and you're like, man, should I go for that? No, that's dumb. No, that's fast, right? Like, you sit there contemplating your entire way of playing the game by watching Ian play the game. He's playing such a different game to you that you're contemplating changing your entire play style, which is what makes him so influential in that regard. Is he just had a way with speed. He was just much faster than anybody and sacrificed a lot of consistency for that.
I see.
I like that last bit I said.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we move on, one comment on that. You said earlier that, the fact that IN is like so dominant in so many different eras, I don't think a lot of people don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just games change so fast, and games have changed so much over time that it's so hard to be consistent in so many different like eras of things. But it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I've been there. It's hard.
Yeah. All right, so let's pivot a little bit.
Mhm.
This is a big one. Who was Silence?
Okay, Silence. So
We've talked about him like in all 3 videos, right?
yeah.
So you don't have to give me the exact same spiel,
Yeah,
But
okay.
at the same time, who was this guy?
Yeah, so at first it was thought that Silence was a multiplayer guy because so the Ratchet and Clank 3 multiplayer community had like incredibly good movement for a long time, and it took a while for like us single player speedrunners to kind of catch up to that. But the movement in multiplayer and single player are like not really the same. Like there's a couple of things that translate over, but it's not really the same. So we thought that Silence was just a really good multiplayer like player, um, and it transferred over. But it turns out that multiplayer was not available in Japan. So Silence must have either like so Silence essentially like figured out a bunch of these movement techniques just all on his own by watching glitch videos on YouTube in like 2008, 2009, stuff like that. But I guess he just never culminated it into a speedrun until 2013, which was that run that we ended up discovering ended up it was titled in Japanese, so it was completely like under the radar for 10 months. We didn't even know about its existence for the longest time. But Silence just came out swinging big time with those like Silence just came out swinging hard with those strats. It was ridiculous to see such a night and day like way of playing the game. Like we were so behind in the West. It was embarrassing, like to say the least. It was embarrassing. Um he innovated so many new strats and he did so many things for the game. It's really hard to know much about Silence at all. Like we never really got in contact. There's always these people like that. Like there was kind of similar thing in the Jack series where there was this really dominant French runner who just wasn't in the Skype group, wasn't in the Discord, barely talked at all. Just the only little conversation you could get through YouTube, and that's what Silence was. Perhaps it's because there was a language barrier, but maybe it's because Skype just wasn't like big in Japan or something, but at the end of the day, Silence was just like off doing his own thing. He was just a very smart guy and his run was really ahead of its time. So we don't really know much about Silence, and he hasn't uploaded in what 3-4 years by now. So we just don't really know a whole lot. He's a very mysterious kind of guy. We don't know if somebody else helped him find some of this stuff. We don't know if like where he got the inspiration from. We have a couple little hints from YouTube comments or like here and there where it's like, "Oh, hey Chidori, I used to watch your glitch videos in 2008 and stuff like that." There's little things like that, but like there's nothing explicitly like being like, "Here's a," it's not like my guide existed in 2011 and then Silence put it all together into a run or something.
Yeah.
Like Silence must have like like he definitely found some of it on the web, but some of it was just completely handcrafted and he made that into his own run. And that's about all I can really say.
That's a lot to say. So thank you.
Yep. Sick.
How is it that one person can be so influential in the Ratchet speedrunning scene? Like you made an entire video. The man who changed Ratchet and Clank speedruns.
The real big thing that Silence discovered, like it's not really like, I don't know. I wouldn't. Okay, I'll start over by saying this. The real big thing that was implemented, I wouldn't say Silence necessarily found it, because multiplayer people were doing this for a while, was his biggest discovery, just like not discovery, but like Silence's biggest transferal from multiplayer into single player speedruns was the neutral. The moment he started doing neutrals, it opened the door for everything. Everything changed once neutrals were found, because it literally set the base for how movement technique was done, and is how it still is done today. A lot of the movement techniques are still use that same premise of remaining, like keeping the charge boot speed to in some kind of sliding state, so that you can do Ratchet's normal moveset while you have the charge boots out, and it's just a really really big deal. So perhaps it's just like, it's just we just didn't really have like anyone in the West that like really wanted to push the boundaries, especially because we had a lot of Ratchet games to like think about. Like they all work kind of differently, and they were all like kind of in its infancy and stuff like that. So it was either going to happen slowly but surely here in the West, that we were going to find these new techniques, and we were going to discover neutrals, we were going to discover whip jumps, or you could just have Silence just do it all in one fell swoop, which is just nothing less like nothing short of a miracle. So yeah. I suppose that's the best I can give on that.
That's good. No, that's fine. It's a part of that. It's kind of funny though. Like, do you think that people knew about neutrals like at all? Like even in a multiplayer sense, do you think anybody knew what neutrals were?
Yeah, for sure. The thing with neutrals in multiplayer was, so in multiplayer you don't have Clank, and there was a lot like less quote unquote options in multiplayer. So not having Clank on your back gave you a bunch of. So yeah, let me just start that over. Not having Clank on your back in multiplayer kind of limited your options with movement. So I feel like the multiplayer people probably started experimenting more with what you had from the get-go. So multiplayer people definitely found neutrals at one point, and then they used neutrals to start lag jumping. But everything that's in single player, neutral long jumps, falling neutral long jumps, like falling neutral lag jumps, all these different things, like neutral wrench swings, all these different things, that was all like found by Silence effectively. And I don't think there's anything like any concrete answer as to how he like found any of that stuff, but yeah, I think like the multiplayer people definitely knew for a long time, but expanding upon it is definitely something that Silence brought forth to the table.
Absolutely. Besides specific movement tech, what do you think are the 3 biggest changes to the run that Silence found?
The biggest like skip or glitch that Silence found has to be VR. VR early was a big deal. Like skipping planets, period. That's a big deal, like you always think of Ratchet and Clank as going planet by planet and just going in order and stuff like that. But actually being able to skip planets, like going to VR early in New Game Plus meant that it means you don't have to go to Aquatos. It means you don't have to go to Tyrannosis. Huge deal. Saves a lot of time, at least 5 minutes, something like that. As for everything else, trying to think. Let's think of some of the other things he found. I feel like another pretty big one that we still do in runs today is refractor skip. So there was a ghost Ratchet that was found on Marcadia, which I think that was already found by some YouTube guy.
Yep.
But once you get to laser defense facility on Marcadia, there's like this refractor that like reflects all these lasers and stuff like that. And Silence effectively just skip that entirely with the Ghost Ratchet glitch. And like normally on Obani Gemini, you need this normally on Obani Gemini, you need this refractor in order to do like the puzzle and stuff like that. But Silence was able to find this incredibly clever clip through a barrier that, completely bypasses this whole puzzle. And I think that also saves a big chunk of time, and also that planet is quite slow and boring. So if we can get past that spherical part, then that's that's a bit of a blessing. Thanks to Silence for that. That's a pretty huge one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Anything else?
Did he skip any other planets? Because I thought it was more than just 2.
Yeah, he skipped Iridia as well. But so the thing with, I guess I can go over this one too. I can go over more than 3. Maybe I'll do like 4 or 5 if I think of some. But yeah, Silence also found a way to skip Iridia, which I believe we found in the West. Like, so of course, there was this 10-month period where we didn't know about Silence's run. So in that time, both Silence and the West had on their own figurative, like, well, hold up. I don't know. I was gonna say the word figuratively, but I don't even know what that means. So, I'm just gonna skip on that. But yeah. So in that 10-month span where the West hadn't found Silence's run, both Silence and the West had found the Iridia skip, which was they found them in their own way, but it's effectively just a way of skipping the it's not the Hypnomatic, but it's skipping a gadget. It's skipping a gadget that you get at the end of Iridia that you normally need to complete Quark's hideout. But Silence's way was a lot quicker, and honestly way smarter. So no offense to like IN or whatever, like whoever found the way we did it, but yeah, Silence did end up finding it before the West. So technically, he holds the right to the he holds the rights to that skip. But it is kind of a weird quirk that in that 10-month span, we found the same skip, like regardless of not knowing about each other. Yeah. But technically Silence holds the right to that skip because he found it first. Another pretty huge one, skipping all of Iridia, skipping all the the little missions and stuff like that. Couple minutes there, like easily, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other big discoveries you can think of?
Yeah.
Or big changes, I mean?
Let me try and think. Yeah, I guess I can go over this. I feel like Silence really pushed the well, hold on. I feel like Silence really put the mega turrets to use as well. Every single Ratchet and Clank game, has some kind of weapon that enables you to push you through a wall. And in Ratchet 3, Silence really used the mega turrets in a ton of places to just save time everywhere. There was the Velden dogfight skip. There's the one on Hollow Star Studios in the Ratchet section. He immediately, like literally right away, he just clips out of the wall and goes into the titanium bolt path. And there's a teleporter that just gets you to the end of the ship. And I think the one on Obani Draco as well is way too ahead of its time. Like I don't know how anybody can think of that. He literally goes on top of this like spherical part and clips through it and charges to the end. Like it's just completely nuts. Like I don't know how anybody can think of like, oh, I'm gonna clip on top of this thing. Like most people would just clip through a flat wall, but like Silence just literally defies the odds and just just thinks of these crazy skips. And like again, that turret strat is still done by like non-top level runners. Like that's still the go-to way to do it. It's just crazy how many things Silence found back then that are still seeing use today.
Ahead of his time for sure.
Yep.
Okay. Who was around at the time to appreciate these discoveries? Like, what was the community like, and what were they doing at the time?
The community. So Silence was a little bit before my time because they discovered him in like I think late 2014 or something like that. Maybe no, it was early 20. Okay. Yeah. So I think Silence was discovered in early 2014, and there weren't a lot of people around back then. This was kind of before my time. I had a couple friends in the community and stuff like that, but I never like officially picked up a game and like started grinding it or anything. But there are only a handful of people that could really watch this unfold in awe. The only people were effectively IN, Zem, and then those were the only two Ouya runners at the time. And then there were a couple like Ratchet 1, Ratchet 2 people, mostly Ratchet 1, like Sippy and Nuka, Slaughter, Vortex, stuff like that. Like those were the only guys that were really like watching this whole silence thing unfold. And Nuka was the one that found it in the first place. So when he showed it to the others, I'm pretty sure everyone's, jaw just completely dropped. Like, I can't even imagine what it would have been like back then to just have everything just be turned on its head. I've never seen that happen to any other game other than Ratchet. If it would have happened, it would definitely happen that early. But by as much as it did, I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, man. I'm just trying to think of like a game nowadays that's got a big following, and then they find a video that's 20 minutes faster.
Yeah.
Like
you wouldn't see that
30%.
you wouldn't see that kind of stuff today. I mean, it would be kind of the same if you can find a run like now that's like like if you find a hidden 120-star run that just has like 5 new strats and is 20 seconds faster and breaks the record, that would be just as influential. Even though it's only 20 seconds, like we're just talking way more optimized eras here. But
yeah. If any SM64 runners out there might get that reference a little more, because I'm not huge into that, but I think I can even understand that 20 seconds, that's big, even in SM64.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see here. You showed up in 2015, like early or late 2015?
Early 2015, yeah.
Okay. From your perspective, I know you weren't there the whole time, but Silence's time stood for a full year, right?
Yeah.
He got it like in early 2014 and it wasn't broken until like mid 2015, I think it was. But what was the community doing at the time to catch up?
To catch up. Yeah, it's again, this is kind of tough because it's kind of before my time, but I'd have to hold up. I just really want to see when his time was set. Okay, so yeah. Silence's 3746 was that was the last time he set. And that was set in June 2014. Now, that would stand for the rest of the year. And pretty much anybody that wanted to beat it like had to learn the movement. The thing is, when that run came out, nobody, and even for like a really long time, actually, I don't think it was for that long. Yeah, hold on, I'll start this one over. So Silence's final time was 37:46, and that was a super sick run for the time. Obviously, his culmination of all these new strats that he found, putting the movement together, bam, that's that run, and that was the end of him. Like that, his job was done, and it was now up to somebody else to lower the time. And somebody from the West, had to pick up the pieces, had to like analyze that run and go, okay, I'm going to embark on this journey to learn the movement and to translate that, like, what exactly is he doing and how can I do the same thing? And that person was IN. IN was the first person to even try to like learn the movement. And I feel like IN could have definitely competed with Silence. I don't think anybody would like put that put that into question. IN could have for sure toppled Silence. He improved so rapidly fast. He basically learned all the movement, and he got a ridiculously good time. Like he was 2 minutes. Like IN was 2 minutes off at one point. But I think he just moved on to other categories. I don't really know why he didn't keep like. I don't know why IN never ended up pushing further. But IN was the first person to really try and close the gap and learn the movement and stuff. It wouldn't take until Zem to really like try and topple it. I think Zem, was just kind of running a little bit casually. He looked at the SDA run back in the day and just went, I want to try and beat that and stuff. And then he took a break and stuff. But he hung around when IN like kind of beat his time and stuff. But I think when Zem saw Silence and I actually feel like it was probably when Zem saw IN move in that way, even though it originally came from Silence. Zem got inspired and wanted to try and push the time lower. So, Zem had to spend all this time learning the game from the ground up, essentially, again, completely new route, completely new movement. Like Zem's early 80% runs were just vastly different from how he had to play the game now. He had to just start all over, like, to put it blunt.
Yeah. I imagine so. It's an interesting way that you put it. The idea that like, oh, Silence is doing it? Man, that's crazy. Oh, IN's doing it too? Like, oh, like it's possible. Like we can do it too. Like it's not so far out of reach that it's impossible anymore. It's like, oh, we understand it now. I need to learn it.
Yeah, exactly. Even though Zem definitely did hold Ian in high regard.
Hmm. That kind of gives me a glimpse into who he is as a competitor. What do you think that Sem is like as a competitor?
Oh man. Hmm. It's hard for me to put into words what kind of competitor Zem is because he's changed a lot over the years.
True.
Um, his his motivations, his drive, his gameplay style, everything's changed. Like, oh, it's very hard. I'd have to like think a little bit about it. Let me try and think of like his early years.
Yeah, you can split it up into different eras if you want, if that
Hmm.
helps.
Yeah. Hmm. Zem's early years were really, really like mesmerizing to watch for me because Silence still had the record when I started watching Zem try to beat it. You know, just watching Zem close the gap on Silence was like, a thing of awe for sure. I could just tell that the game was in this kind of renaissance where it's like not only were the players adapting and learning these new techniques, all these neutral moves and stuff, but everyone was having so much fun with it. Like you could just tell by relearning the game all over again, you would think that it's a bit of a chore or whatever. But like once you get over that hurdle, you're like, oh my god, the skill ceiling is ridiculous for this game. It is unbelievably high, and you start realizing how much you can optimize the game just from having better movement. So the thing Ian and Zem did at first was just completely ditching lock strafe and going third person and just doing the moves that Silence was doing, but in third person, not in lock strafe. Um, and I feel like I remember watching Silence's run and then watching Zem as well. I felt like Zem, one of Zem's defining features in his early years that made him stand apart from everyone else. Uh, this is one thing that I personally struggled with is Zem didn't really set up many things. He wouldn't like line up his whip jumps. He wouldn't like line up his neutral long jump. He would just go. And I feel like one thing that was really, really hard was to do neutral long jumps, you need to charge for a while, then you need to let Ratchet slide, and then you need to, do that long jump. So you need to calculate how much room that you have in front of you way in advance. And Zem just had that down to a T. And
Mm,
he wouldn't really line any of that up at all. Like he was just a very, very confident runner. Like his gameplay style can best be described as confident. Um, very minimal lineups, very good consistency, and very good speed as well. Just a really well-rounded um like runner overall. And he just was very in touch with the strats that he was doing. He was doing things that were very, very smart. He wasn't taking super unnecessary risks. He knew at the time when Silence had the record, he could beat him with better movement, and that's what he did. And I think, yeah, Zem just straight from the get go was a really, really smart runner for sure. When he picked up, like, when he started actually pushing to beat Silence, yeah, Zem was a very, very smart runner and just approached it very intelligently for sure.
nice. Thank you. Yeah,
We can talk about it. He's obviously he's going to keep the record for a long time, so we can I can talk a bit about him later. We can bring him
yeah,
up later.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, shoot.
The only thing I was gonna put on top of that was that like Zem was talking to me and he told me that he used to stream for like 8 hours a day, and then as soon as the stream was over, he'd practice for 4 hours more.
Yep, I
And
don't
like
doubt. I don't doubt that. I think
that's so insane to me, but it speaks so much to it. The idea that he can literally like, oh, I don't need to line it up because I know it because I practiced it for 12 hours today.
yep, exactly. Yeah, Zem was a really, really hard worker. I think one of the reasons he played as much as he did was partially because uh I don't really know if it's because he wanted that record back or whatever that he like had all the way back in 2013, but I think beating Silence was way more prestigious. And, I think he wanted that too. But I also just think Zem was having fun with the game. Like low
Hmm.
key, I think the game was just again, the game was just in such a great state when Zem was trying to beat Silence. Like it was all down to the movement. Obviously there were a couple of tricks, but none of the tricks were any like I feel like a lot of the Ratchet games are in its best state when the tricks are easy, but the movement is hard, and
Mhm.
stringing it all together is going to be very, very difficult. That's always when I feel like the games are in its best state, and that's when they're the most fun to run. And I think that's why Zem played as much as he did, is because the game was really, really fun.
Absolutely. Well, we all know the story. Zem would go on to get the record eventually,
Mhm.
and then he would hold it for 6
And a half.
years.
6.5. Yep.
6.5 years. Put some respect on his name. 6.5. Don't you get it wrong.
Yep.
Okay. What do you think it was about his personality that drove him to fight tooth and nail to keep his crown like that? Because it wasn't for lack of competition. There were
No.
people constantly trying to take that crown from him. What do you think it was about him that really made him hold on to it so hard?
I think when you play a game enough, like there are certain moments in your life where you become very attached to a game and a category when you like start speedrunning, whether it's your first, proper game that you ran, whether it's the first category you ran, whether it's some kind of barrier break that you set, something along that keeps you running. I think Zem beating Silence was just the beginning. Like he still had a lot of fun with the game. He still knew it could go lower. There were all these little tiny things that kept Zem playing, I felt. All these new people coming in, the movement guide, his GDQ run, like all these things just coming in waves, all these new discoveries as well, new movement techniques, just all these different things just kept Zem playing throughout the years. And I'm not really sure like one thing that was very one thing that made me how do I say this? Um the moment I knew that Zem cared very deeply about Ouya NG Plus was, after his GDQ run, he got a big increase in viewership and stuff like that. And he was becoming, a little bit more of a personality and stuff. Of course, he still very much cared about the record, but he was trying to balance it with becoming a bigger streamer and stuff like that. And, I respect that. But there was one day when he was going for the sub 3130. And when he was going for sub 3130, I remember there was a stream, there was no mic. There was no cam, there was no nothing. And
Mm.
I was like, "Oh shit." Cuz you that's normal for some people with 5, 10 viewers that don't really care about much of the interaction. They don't care about growing their stream. They just speedrun for fun. But keep in
Mhm.
mind, Zem wanted to grow his stream. Zem wanted to give Ratchet publicity. He wanted publicity, And for him to take such a drastic turn and just one stream, he just went, I'm not going to use mic. I want this record. I
Mhm.
want this run. And that was a big turning point. That's when I knew he really cared. That's when I know when anybody cares is you're willing to sacrifice other things around you in order to just play the game and get that run. And it's not like anybody was close. He just really, really wanted that run. He could just see it. Like that was the crowning achievement for him at the time. And time again, when people close the gap or new strats are found, he feels like his record is just he feels unsatisfied with it. He wants to update his time with new strats. Every single time new strats come out, he just goes, well, I guess my run's outdated. I have to do a new one because he cares and loves the game that much.
Absolutely. I think to your credit or to what you said a second ago, when he got 3130 was probably what 2018 or so,
Something like that.
somewhere in
Maybe
that. Yeah,
2017, something like that.
that was he was an established. He was a partnered streamer.
Yep.
You know, and for him to just turn everything off and be like, nope, it's game only, it's game
Yep.
time.
Yep.
That's like suicide to your career if you did that like multiple times, like consistently. No one wants to watch that,
Exactly.
long term. So the fact that he's like,
Precisely.
I'm willing to do it, and I don't care if it costs me viewers. We're doing it. We're going all in. That's dedication.
Yeah,
Do you
you
think?
just Just one quick thing. Yeah, you got to respect it at the end of the day. I feel like a lot of people just come into the stream and see the surface. They go, "Okay, I'm coming here for entertainment. I'm coming here for the Zem entertainment, for the mic, the cam, the good vibes, the Ratchet games." But when you're missing a big part of that, a lot of people tend to just click away, but that was when I stayed, like, for the full thing. I wanted to see Zem get this through. Because you just gotta respect it. And again, um, sorry, I'm just gonna steal your words here just in case, like, you want that in there.
Oh, sure.
Uh, um, like, putting, uh, what was you said? You said, putting just to randomly, like, turn off your cam and mic just like that. I mean, if you were to do that multiple times in a row, I mean, it's career suicide, essentially, like, that could be the end of, like, whatever you're working on, like, you could be building this viewership, constantly growing and stuff. And Zem cared about the run that much that at least, for those, at least it might have been 2 streams, but, he was willing to go through with it because he cared that much, and I
Mhm.
respect that. Anyway, that's it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you. You had mentioned a minute ago his GDQ run, and I think this was a bit of a turning point, maybe not just for the community, but or for himself. But
Mhm.
it was a big run. It was a big milestone run. I think a lot of people have told me that run in particular really inspired them to either join the community or to start speedrunning, or a lot of things. What do you think about it? Was I think his 2016 GDQ run.
Mhm.
What do you think about that run, or what do you think it was about that run that made it so monumental?
So let's just get one thing out of the way with the GDQ run. The gameplay was excellent. Like, that time he got was really, really good. And he lost like, the biggest mistake he made was from something that wasn't even his own fault. It was like some random controller malfunction. That run was exceptionally well played. Like, it goes to show how practiced and consistent Zem is just on the gameplay aspect alone. So, let's just square that away first.
Hmm.
Um, Secondly, he's just a very good face for commentary. Like, he loved the game, he loves speedrunning, he loves the community, and that puts it, he's just very enthusiastic and he's just very passionate. And you could really see that in that GDQ run. It all comes together culminatively very well in just the whole package. And I think another thing that adds on to it, like, a little bit, was just that, like, Zem was kind of the big Ratchet guy at the time, and I was kind of the big Jack guy, and we were both front seat at the time. Because I had a run as well of Jack that year, so we were representing the PlayStation community at the time at
Hmm.
large. And I think a lot of people were just yeah, a lot of people today still talk about, they just like that. They like the chemistry between me and him back then, and it's not like anything has changed, but it's just early days, it's good to reminisce and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I can't say I hated my own commentary either. I feel like we did a great job, and he played exceptionally well, and it was super well received. And I'm really glad the community expanded well upon that run's conclusion.
Hell yeah. It was a good run. I went back and watched it just a couple weeks ago, and I was like, still holds up, man.
Yeah, it's super good. The
Still
gameplay's
holds up.
great. The commentary's great. Opera was good.
Yeah. I forgot about the opera. You're right.
Jokes were good. Yeah, everything. It was all good.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if you ever saw the original ones. Like, did you ever watch the Sinux or the Deathfire 1, 2, 3 Ratchet runs?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you think that this was like the first time that Ratchet and Clank was actually shown off in such a good light that might have been a thing that changed people's aspects?
I don't really think so. I don't think that, like, those early, like, GDQ runs necessarily, like, tarnished Ratchet and Clank. I just think, um like, Ratchet and Clank wasn't ready to be shown at GDQs until at least 2015. Like, I'm just willing to put it there. Like, we
Hmm.
needed to find some specific things before we could blow people's minds with these kinds of runs. Um So, no, I don't think the viewership was all that great for the early GDQs anyway. Like, obviously I remember it. But I don't think a lot of people remember it anyway. So it's not like those early GDQ runs like tarnish things. I
get
think
you.
I think when 2016 came around, people just went like, "Oh yeah, Ratchet and Clank, I remember this." And then they watch the run and they're like, "Holy moly," right?
Yeah,
It's just a night and day, like you just never expect that that's how you run it. Like it's just crazy, yeah.
I get you. Okay. Do you keep up with things still like nowadays?
Absolutely. I
What
can
are your
talk about
thoughts?
I can talk about Whiffle and Tarna all day.
Yes. Thank you. That's where I
Of
was
course.
going with this. So first and foremost, Tarnowina took the record for the first time. Zem, the king, 6.5 years, finally fell to Tarna.
Yep.
Talk to me about that.
Uh a lot of people assume that Tarna taking the record from Zem was some kind of sudden thing that happened, but Tarna's been a perennial like top 5 player for like his
Mm-hmm.
whole career. He's been an incredibly good runner. And being top 5 in Ouya is no slouch. Like the movement is ridiculously hard in that game. It's one of the hardest games I've ever had to speedrun. And yeah, Tarna's just been good since from the get-go. And I have a lot of respect for him for sure. It's kind of interesting to see the like kind of dynamic. I think his first of all, I think his pop off is hilarious. Like like the suck on these nuts, Sem, or whatever he said.
Yeah.
I think that's really funny. I mean, obviously there's no bad blood between any of them anymore. There used to be a little bit. There's I mean, we've had a little bit of beef here and there, but I think deep down a lot of people are happy that Tarna got it eventually because he definitely deserves it. He worked very hard to get where he was. He didn't slow down for strats. He didn't just get it out of he didn't get it out of the blue. He put in the work and he got it fair and square. But yeah, Tarna's a bit completely on the opposite spectrum of Zem. Zem, like everyone knows when Zem gets a record, he makes. I wouldn't say he makes a big deal out of it, but he's got these explosive pop offs, and Tarna's just completely on the other end. He's got all these alts, changes his username all the time. He's a shit poster. He's a meme lord. And even when he comes into my chat these days, Tarna just doesn't talk about what's relevant at all. He'll just type some kind of song lyrics or whatever's going on. Like it's just some random bullshit. like it's funny. Like I like Tarna. Some people can think he's a bit much, but at the end of the day, I enjoy him. When you talk to him one-on-one though, like he's a very, very honest guy. Tarna's very honest. He says what's on his mind, and I respect that a lot. I respect very honest people. And when he's struggling with something in the game or IRL, he tells us about it. And when he's doing well, he also tells us about it. And yeah, again, it's just that honesty that I really respect. So, like at the end of the day, Tarna knows when to, be a meme lord, and when to kind of cool down on it and whatnot. He's a great friend at the end of the day.
Glad to hear that. How would you describe him as a runner?
Okay,
Or his
so
play style, maybe.
Throughout the years, I feel like it's very tough to pinpoint an exact play style for Tarna because I feel like he was very similar to Zem, but just those couple seconds here and there on those planets, which is again just Zem with these slightly faster setups, slightly faster strats, added up to Zem just being a little bit better. But I feel like as of recent, ever since Tarna got the record, I feel like he's definitely known to be kind of an old, like kind of a bit of an IN runner, a bit, just sacrificing a bit of consistency for speed. Going for things like triple charge on Obani Draco, going for things like mission 3 skip, which I actually cut that out because I think everyone does that. Yeah, hold up. I'll just redo that.
Okay.
I feel like these days Tarna is very well known for for being, you know, kind of an IN style runner. Very focused on speed, doesn't really shy away from difficult strats, and even if it sacrifices the, you know, makes the reset counter a little bit higher, he goes for whatever's the fastest. You know, he's not afraid to go for free fall skip. He's not afraid to go for triple charge on a Bonnie Draco. These things are very deadly, and they can just end your run. And he goes for it with no fear, and I have a lot of respect for that, because Ouya is starting to reach the point where you can't really just rely on your movement. You do need great movement, which, you know, he has arguably the best movement in the game at this point in time. But you need the big tricks as well, because the big tricks will end up saving you a bunch of time. So you need to hit the big tricks, and you need to have exceptionally great movement. And that's why he's the best right now, is because he does a mixture of both of those things.
Perfect. Thank you. And then, speaking of perennial top fives, I think the evergreen second place was usually Wiffle.
Yeah, Wiffle.
Tell me about him.
Man, Wiffle's been good for such a long time. And the thing is, most runners, how do I say this? Most runners, when they get burnt out, or, you know, have been through a long grind or finally PB'd or something like that, a lot of people tend to like run something else, you know, for a break. Wiffle's literally always ran Ouya NG+. He did like a little bit of Ratchet 1 at one point, but that's it. Like, he's always been on that Ouya NG+ grind, you know. He's always just, I think when, you know, he just wanted to get a really, really good time for himself back in the day, but eventually, I think when he got close, when he got to top 3, he really wanted to make it a goal for himself to get that record. And we all wanted him to get it for such a long time. I mean, he's been close for years. And, you know, this isn't this isn't as an insult or whatever, but just to, you know, put it in perspective how long the grind was. I remember when I first started watching him in like 2017, you know, there was hair on his head. and you know, 4 years later, there's no hair on his head. And you look at the clock and you go, man, has it been 4 years? And yeah, it's been 4 years, and he's still grinding at it. And it's not like he's bad. He's an amazing runner. The game is that hard. I really, really want to emphasize that. The game is just that hard. Cracking into the top 3 these days is gonna require something, like, you know, it's gonna require something else. Like, you need to put in exceptional hours if you want to do that. But yeah, I mean, Wiffle's been kind of this fan favorite runner for such a long time. He had so many close runs, choke after choke, close run after close run. You know, Zem lowering the record, Tarna lowering the record, and Wiffle's just always been right there. And the community members talk about him all the time, and they always, you know, let each other know when he's on pace, when he's on the run, when he's streaming and stuff like that. But I feel like to non-Ratchet, like, you know, people that aren't aware of the Ratchet history, Wiffle just goes completely under the radar. And that's a shame, because he's a very, very impressive runner. I know Tarna himself says that Wiffle's got the best movement in the game right now. And I can totally see why. He moves very, very fluidly, very Zem-esque in a way, but just that tiny, tiny bit, you know, elevated. It's hard to compare because Zem's PB is at this point, you know, a bit over a year old and stuff. But yeah, Wiffle just has exceptionally great movement as well. And he does shy away from a couple of strats, but I do feel like he's slightly more consistent. Yeah, he's still, you know, he's still a really great runner. It's when the top 3 is this close, it's kind of hard to like marginalize the amount of differences in their play style. It's all going to be very, very optimized, you know, very similar routes. The strats aren't going to deviate all that much. There's a couple little things here and there, but, you know, Wiffle is just as good as the other two, for sure. Hands down.
Perfect.
I'll talk a little bit about when he actually got it, though.
Sure, yeah.
When Wiffle got the record, I mean, we were all so ecstatic. I remember the tweet, him celebrating. I remember shooting him a DM. I remember being at just waking up, and then I remember waking up the day he got it. I mean, it was tears and joy. Everybody was so happy for him. Um, I don't think people necessarily cared about Wiffle being the one to beat Zem, but I do think people cared about Wiffle being number one, at least at one point in time. It just
Mhm.
it just wouldn't feel right. He had just spent way too much time to not get number one, and I'm very happy he finally did it. I think he's on break right now, but I do think we'll see him back eventually. Man, it was only 3 weeks ago. That's crazy. I
Yeah.
can't believe at the time of recording this, I can't believe it's only been 3 weeks ago since he got it. It felt like a lot longer because I don't know. I feel like good memories feel like they're a lot more distant. They feel like a lot further away. But yeah, I just remember it being a very good day, and everyone was just so stoked for him. He's a really really good guy, and we've shared a lot of advice with each other.
That's it's a common thread that I've heard is that Wiffle sounds like a really cool guy.
Yep, definitely.
All right.
He's very unique.
Speaking of coming back, what do you think? Do you think Zem's ever going to come back, or when he'll come back? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh man, you know me. You know I'm honest, so I don't like. I'm gonna say what I think is on I'm gonna say what's on my mind, but I don't
Mhm.
necessarily know if this is gonna fit in the video. It might.
Okay.
It might not. Um, I feel like Zem right now is, Zem is currently expanding into the world of content creation overall.
Hmm.
Maybe expanding a little bit above, or maybe expanding a little bit outside of Ratchet, because he's been running the Ratchet games for as long as I can remember. Um, all these Ratchet speedruns and stuff, it starts to weigh a toll on you. Not just playing the same thing over and over again, but just the high level of play that you have to, be at is very taxing, and playing at that top level is really really exhausting. The 8 hours you used to be able to play when you were younger just turns into 2-3 hours now, and your hands hurt. You're getting old. It's getting tiring. Zem's coming up to 30. It's
Hmm.
we're all getting a little older, and do I think he'll take it back? He definitely could if he actually sat down and did it. And if Zem remembers why he loved the game in the first place, and why he started running, and why he was excited about the game in the first place, he would take it back in a heartbeat. It wouldn't take more than a couple of weeks, I think.
Mm.
His level of play is just really, really good, and he's just got such a good understanding of of the um the game as a whole. And I think most importantly, I think Zem probably has the biggest clutch factor of the three. Um, when he's ahead, um, he really, really, really holds on to that run. And even if there's some time loss at the end, he usually finishes it out. I feel like I see him close the run out more than it ends up in a choke, even though it's very easy to choke on command center. Like obviously I've seen it. It happens to everybody, but if we're talking Ouya, Zem has a fairly good clutch factor. Now he is expanding into content creation, and I don't really know how that's going, because it seems like he's coming up with a different idea or a different direction he wants to go every other week. And until he finds that, I don't really know if we're going to end up seeing him playing Ratchet, cuz I just feel like I've seen a lot of different things from him. I've seen Pokemon stuff. I've seen general YouTube content he's been trying to push. He was trying to write some kind of paper on the algorithm and stuff.
Hmm.
He was taking a break. He was trying to come back to Ratchet but play future games. It's hard to know. I don't even know
Yeah.
where he's at right now. The last thing I saw him stream was Pokemon shiny hunting,
Hmm.
and I don't blame him for taking a break at all. I just think, speaking as a friend, I think, um, it's best to ask yourself, do you want, what's your goal? Is your goal the audience? Is your goal money? Is your goal fame and glory? Is your goal self-satisfaction? There's a lot of these little things that,
Yeah.
add up, and I feel like his it's not what he's doing, it's what he's valuing. I ask him a lot what he really wants in life, and like what he wants out of like what he's doing. What's the purpose of pushing for more YouTube content? What's the purpose of doing the Pokemon stuff? What's the purpose of things in general? And until he finds that, I don't really see him coming back, at least for the foreseeable future. If he can find the drive, if he can find the love that he used to have for the game, then he'll come back and play. But if he's worried about numbers, if he's worried about mental health, if he's worried about all sorts of other factors, I don't think he'll last very long playing Ouya. He might, but I think the chat will suffer a lot on the side. He might end up taking anger out on his chat or something like that, because maybe the different direction he was going in was something people liked, and then he goes back to what he used to, and then people are dissatisfied, and it's all about how he handles it, and it's all about like what he values in general. So that's my take. I do think he can get it back, but I think his mind needs to be in the right place.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wish all the best for him, because there's nothing worse than feeling scatterbrained. Just feeling like you have a bunch of ideas you just can't put into fruition because of some one reason or another.
I hear you.
That's it.
Okay. Last chance. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you think we should cover?
I guess I will say this. So my old movement guide from 2015 was like, I've unlisted it now because my voice was my voice was really squeaky. I think I was 18 when I made the video, maybe 19, something like that. I was really young when I made it. And I feel like Ratchet I feel like Ouya has been pretty dead at the top level for I'll start that over. I feel like Ouya's been fairly stagnant for quite some time, especially in the mid to like low level range. There hasn't really been anybody around to kind of inspire anything. Again, Tarna doesn't really care about growing his stream or anything like that. So, sometimes it's the record holders that end up, carrying the torch to inspire new runners and stuff like that.
Right.
I really wish somebody would update my movement guide from 2015. I've unlisted it because I wasn't happy with my voice was like, I was 18 when I made it. My English wasn't as good. There's kind of just some bad puns in there that I'm just like, I cringe at a little bit. But I still link it to people if, they really want to ask for it. But I think what we really need is a good updated movement guide that covers a lot of the new things. Cause there's things like insta whips that isn't in the movement guide anymore. There's proxies. They're all over the game now that's not in the movement guide. And this is a call to anybody that wants to make an updated movement guide. I really think it should be done if you want to keep the Ratchet games accessible and you want to, keep the scene alive and stuff, because the people that have learned the games might take it for granted how hard it was to pick the game up at first. It's a struggle. The movement is a struggle when you first start. It's really, really tough. It's very unintuitive and it's very hard. So, I'm wishing for anybody out there, just a new movement guide would be brilliant. I'm not making one because I already make enough YouTube videos as is.
That's right. Okay. Lots of call to action. Anybody out there listening? New movement guide.
For sure. Anything else? Let me see. Are you going to touch on quit exploit at all?
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know what that is.
Okay. It's quite complicated, so I can't really exactly tell you the details of it. But
give me the broad strokes and I'll look it up.
Okay, so quit exploit is a way to. It's a PS3 exclusive glitch that involves some overflowing of the bolt count and your save file values and stuff like that.
Oh.
It allows you to put like items into the vendor that are not supposed to be there. So when you reach the end of Crash Site, which is like the 5th or 6th last planet in the game, you get something called the Master Plan, which is like, it's actually an item in the game, so it's in your inventory, but it doesn't really it doesn't do anything. It's just like an item that gives you a coordinate.
Right.
You can buy the master plan in the vendor, so you can get the coordinates to like Quark's hideout or whatever from the vendor. So after you complete like VR or whatever, I forget exactly when it is. Maybe it's after Florana. You can just buy the master plans from Crash Site in the vendor, and it cuts the category in half a little bit. And the current world record by Reali is 12 minutes, 12:06, because not only can you skip all that stuff, but you can get to laser defense facility early with something called Tira flips. We haven't seen the Tira guys in New Game Plus no quit exploit since Silence. Silence was the one to cut it out of the run. Like he discovered that.
Right.
And yeah, so we, you know, in the run now, we do Tira flips all the way up to laser defense facility, which like only a couple of people know how to do, by the way. Ridiculously hard trick. Like, and you need to do like 100 of them. So
Jesus.
super, super hard. And then you can Tira flip into the nefarious loading trigger as well on Command Center, which they do in runs now as well. So it's actually like quite a different run, like than no QE. So it's not like, oh, it's the same run, but it's less planets. Like there's actually different strats regarding the planets themselves, which is kind of cool, I think.
Okay.
So that's what quit exploit is.
Gotcha.
I think that should be covered a little bit, at least. Just say that, like, because again, people might look at the splits as like, oh, what's no QE and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just talk for a minute about like, hey, around this time, Izaki and a couple other people discovered a glitch in Ratchet 3 called quit exploit. From here on out, it'll be the category. Cause the category split from here on out. The runs you'll be here is no quit exploit.
Gotcha. When was that found?
Good question. I'd say maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Okay.
So fairly recent, I'd say.
Okay.
I'm just gonna click on like a run on the boards that says 2 years ago, because this must have been February 2019 is this run from. So over 2.5 years ago, at least.
Okay.
So a little bit old, yeah.
Okay. A couple years ago. That's good. That gives me a good time frame, and I'll look into it.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say.
All right.
I guess one more thing. I'll talk a little bit about the future of the game. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Right now, right now, the state of UENG Plus no QE is in a very weird spot, because there's always time to go lower. That's undeniable. There's always going to be time that can be shaved off the run, but it's going to be very negligible from here. Like, I don't really see a path for 26. There could be, with some ridiculously optimized movement and some crazy strats implemented that, we could end up seeing in the future. But 26 is a squeeze right now. I'm sure it'll happen one day. I always have this thing that I say where, like, if you think something's impossible, just throw it out 5 years into the future and it'll probably happen. And like, if someone's sum of best is a barrier break of some kind, like if we think sub 1 is impossible, but someone's sum of best is 59.59, then it'll probably happen in 3 to 5 years or something like that. That's always what I think. So I do think we'll end up seeing 26 someday. I just the competition is just very contained within Tarna and Wiffle right now. There's no newcomers that are showing potential of any kind. It would have to take an already existing Ratchet runner like Sneepy or a Scotto or a Reali or Franz or Ninja Ratchet or somebody that could just close the gap and bring some competition forth to Tarna and Wiffle. Or it would have to take Zem to come back in order to push the time lower. Yeah, we're definitely in a bit of a stalemate, and I think you know what? I think that's actually a good thing. I think Tarna and Wiffle have grinded a shit ton, and same with Zem. So I think the fact that it's just resting at this like high 27 mark is maybe a good thing. we'll see if the times end up going lower, because I mean, Wiffle and Tarna's time as the time of recording this are only 2 to 3 weeks old. So we'll see what the future brings, but I think both of them might be content just leaving it there for at least a little bit. But time will tell.
Time will tell. Okay, Ricky. We've been going for like an hour.
Yeah, mine are always an hour, aren't they?
It's all good. I appreciate that. You know, it's better than 20 minutes because then, you know, I feel like you got something to say. So,
Yeah.
Well, as always, it's been a pleasure. Let's go ahead and wrap this up here.
I'm going to click on stop record. Yeah.